Hello and welcome to part 3, which is also the final part of the culture management framework. Those who haven't seen the earlier ones, I will be leaving a link over here. So please go and visit it. It will do you a lot of good to understand it right from the start. Just bear with me because we are going to talk about certain things which are not only interesting but also very important till the end. So do stay with me till the end. So let's begin. Discussed in the previous two parts with the framework, the measurement, and finally here we want to address the issues in and around which affect culture and how they could be important, because we have talked about the individual perspective, the individual measurements and what affects the individual, but we have not talked about the organization as a whole, right, and what affects the organization. So hence this would be an effort to cover that area in quite some depth and also leave back some good tips for you. So if we look at this people management framework, I would not call it culture because culture is a part of this framework, as you can notice. In this people management framework, what you notice is that you have a set of boundaries, which are influences, environment, limitations and experiences. And these boundaries kind of hold the organization within, which is a composite of culture, cognition, competency, priority, principles and problems. So let us observe the boundaries first. So if you look at the boundaries, what we notice here is the boundaries are basically a set of problems which are based on triggers, and how we reason our choices is how we are able to deal with those boundaries. Remember, we cannot cross those boundaries, but we can deal with them, because you remove one of them, it comes back again, like something like the Game of Thrones. So if you look at them one by one, so if you look at begin with external. So the external factors are all influencers, right? They influence, say for example, the economy. It's an external factor and it influences the business, right? There's very little one can do to it other than, of course, use its own culture to further mingle with it or to further adjust to it or adapt to it, right? So if it has an adaptive culture, it will be able to adapt to the changing demands externally. Or say for example, technology. If it is a non-tech company and there's too much of technology around, then it needs to adapt, it needs to change its culture, and which is why you will notice that culture lies right over there. About the self we have already discussed, and we all know that the self is all about limitations. So we all have limitations. What kind of limitations? We have limitations of competence, and we also have limitations of principles. Limitations of competence are subjects or areas on which we do not have much depth or information about, while limitations of principles are limitations of acknowledging other dissenting or different ideas and views. Then you have the experience, which is an internal factor. And why is that also a boundary? Because it's a limitation for us. If we have not experienced certain things, we would not be able to deal with it, or we will not be able to address it. Just like how curious a kid becomes when the first time it confronts with something. The first time it sees a cat, the first time it sees a fish, the first time it sees the sea. It's highly curious because it is experiencing a new experience, and hence it does not know how to deal with it. What does it do? It immediately runs back to its mom and dad, to its parents, because the kid seeks the comfort and the security of its parents. in case that amazing thing is going to pose a danger. And that's when is the job of the parents to comfort them. So now let's look at it from the workplace perspective. Think of a particular CEO or a set of people who have all along worked in technology. Now suddenly they have to do strategy or convince people, sell products. It will be very difficult for them because they have never done it before, right? So hence your experiences, while it is internal, is also a boundary. And finally, we have the environment, which is basically the group, which could be a set of people who are part of the organization, another department, another location which is different from yours. These are all kind of boundaries because we do not know how to react to that environment to adapt to it, right? If you look at nature, the fact that a fish cannot survive on land is because it does not have the capabilities to adapt to that environment. Similarly, a lot of companies could not adapt to the conditions that COVID brought upon us and hence had to shut down. And it's honestly very sad. We are part of it. But the fact is, the truth is the truth. So these are basically the boundaries in which an organization exists. If you look at it a little philosophically, it's also the boundaries within which every human being exists. In fact, I've talked about it in my book, Reasoning Our Choices, that we all exist in a set of boundaries, and based on the triggers, we reason for them based on our choices available and the way we have experienced life, right? And hence what we feel is the right answer to it. So now let us look at people. As I said, because people form the basis of an organization, mostly because it is people who are deciding, who are bringing about the change, and who are also kind of leading the organization down. It becomes important to focus on people. And what are people? People are a set of their problem solving capabilities, their skills and competencies, and the culture they bring to the table. Which means that it becomes very important to look at these factors before we put them into the organization or into the environment on which we are not completely sure whether they'll be able to adapt or not. Even if they adapt, the problem could be that they could not be very optimum. It is here that I would like to talk a bit about the concept of effectiveness. A lot of people talk about organizational effectiveness and the scale and the hierarchies. No, every organization actually is absolutely effective to its own limitations. Like the Peter principle, everyone rises up to their own level of incompetence. Similarly, everyone is offering their services up to their level of competence. It is upon us as HR practitioners and as part of the stakeholder team, the leadership team, to ensure that without any bias, without any being judgmental, we should ensure that we get the right team. Because finally, business is all about business. It's all about ensuring shareholder satisfaction. If we are wanting to play a game, that's a different thing. But if we are in the business, it's very important to note this part, that it's becoming very, very important. What is the other thing which is affecting us? There's something in the external happening which a lot of people are not taking note, which is that the Indian demographic dividend is not going to last long. See, today we are almost at a position where 65% of the population is part of the working population group, which means between the age of 18 to 60. This will not remain all the while. In fact, we are predicted to be within this till 2040, 2050 max. and after that there will be a slow decline, which means if India needs to win today, and it can only win today, it can only win while the demographic dividend is high. I remember Uday Kotak tweeting about, a bit sadly, about that there are no companies in the top 50 organizations in the world from India. Why is it so? I would say that it is because of our wrong hiring practices. Somehow we give too much of credence to skills, which can always be taught. And thanks to ChatGPT and all these AI tools, you actually do not need skills. You just need someone who knows how to run those systems and machines. What you need is the right level of competence to deliver results. Am I right? Do mention in the comments. Now, so what is managing all about? Managing is all about ensuring that the organization, which could be faced with these three core issues. One, every organization would be faced with problems. Now, why have I put in problems at the bottom and said that problems are a part of experience? Very simple. What is actually a problem? A problem is a solution which has not yet occurred to me, right? Think of it. Someone has the solution to that problem, which means that someone has had that experience, right? They have internalized it, or they have known about it, and they know how to solve it. People with very high abstract reasoning, and that's part of our cognitive testing assessment, can even bring forth multiple diverse ideas and put them together to help solve problems which have not been solved probably by anyone, right? And that's how we are constantly, as a civilization and as a race, we have been going forward for the last 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 years. So we have to understand that problems are nothing but a set of experiences not yet solved. So there are a set of people who have had experiences. So which means it becomes important to find those set of people who are aware of how to solve those problems, right? And that's what we do when we do a skill-based hiring. We have a set of problems to be solved, which is use the machine in a particular way, or write the code in a particular way, or count the money in a particular way. And that's the set of problems that we want to address as a business. The second part is the prioritization. And why are we saying prioritization is part of the environment and the group? Because the organization's priority is always towards the environment. Now, why is it so? Because it exists within an environment and it feeds itself from that environment. And hence it needs to satisfy that environment to ensure that it survives. What happens when you stop serving the environment around you? You stop coexisting, right? Because no one is alone. We are a combination of a set of existential collaborations. Understand it from the market perspective. If you do not exist in that environment, if you do not make that market your priority, what will you do? You'll serve nothing that the market wants, and hence you'll one day shut shop, right? So hence prioritizing is a very, very important factor, and that's where often companies miss out. Like if you look at all the companies which have shut down, they have just not prioritized. Take the brilliant example of the BlackBerry, a wonderful phone which did not prioritize getting into the environment, Android environment, and that killed it, right? The third becomes its principles. So often this prioritization does have a linkage to the principles. We all are brought up with a set of principles which we adhere to. Like say for example, every animal has the principle of food, sex and survival, right? Those are the basic needs that it needs to survive, to ensure that it contributes back to the environment by ensuring that its genes flow back and they keep on existing. Similarly, for organization, it becomes very important to have a set of principles, like say for example, employee first or customer first, to ensure that its organizational design, its policies are based on those frameworks, on those principles. And every company has its own vision, mission, values, which basically determine this, right? So which means that because of those principles, sometimes it also takes very harsh stance. Take for example the case of when organizations have let go of thousands of people, especially multinationals. This is because they have a policy of not removing one or two people, but basically shutting down departments together. And when a particular department is shut down, all people belonging to the department, whether they are brilliant people, whether they are actually stars in their department, also get chucked out. So how do we resolve this, or how do we go to the core of this problem and try to see it? Look, people problems and its management is best understood and solved when viewed beyond people. While people are all about culture, cognition and competency, managing the same is about digging deeper for problems and its types, the priority and decision focus, and the application of principles to solve them. So, people problems are basically structural problems. How your structures are interacting becomes very important. This interjection of people problems often hijacks the business fundamentals. Look at this framework where we are again talking of internal versus external and individual versus group. So what you'll notice here is the behavior and the culture are internal to the company or to the individual. Behavior is internal to the individual, while culture is internal to the organization, while the job role is external to the individual, while at the group level and externally the organization is filled with departments and the organization itself. Now, when there is misalignment of the vision, mission, values, there could be problems arising within the organization and hence the culture getting distracted and diluted. So if there's a problem of your culture not working, what does it point out to? It points out to the vision needing correction. So if the vision is not aligned, which means that while the department has a particular job or the organization has a particular job, say for example, serving its customers in the most efficient way, and it does not do that, what would happen? That it would lose out on the culture that it was trying to propagate and hence lose business. A great example of this is Starbucks, when Howard Schultz had to come back and reignite the culture because it understood that Starbucks had a culture. It cultivated its customers based on the Starbucks culture. And when he noticed that was going out, it was also the reason when people were not coming back, customers were not coming back to have their coffees. So these are problems of businesses not understanding, and I have multiple examples: HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, Hathway Internet Services, and there are tons. Everyone makes those mistakes, and which could be very easily resolved. Subject, you correct your vision, and hence based on that vision you develop your policies. Often it is not done so because we hire people, and sadly those people bring in the policies from other companies and departments, and it becomes a mishmash, or what in Indian language we call it as a khichdi. It becomes a khichdi policy, and the khichdi policy leads to a khichdi experience. Similarly, if you find that the right behavior is not coming out based on the culture, though you are propagating a particular culture, but you are not seeing right behavior in the individual, then you need to correct the values or hire for the right values. How do you do that? Again, that's where to hire for the right values and also for the right role, get your hiring piece corrected. Once we have done this, once you align the job role to the department, you will notice that things are working wonderfully. And if there are problems between, say for example, if you find your vision is not correct, what is it happening? It is the individual who is deciding his or her job role, but not as per the mission. Right? In decision making, there's always a point of conflict. Should I take this path? Should I do this or do that? Asking. So let's take this case for you to think and ponder about. If there is a conflict between employees and your shareholders and the board and the management, whose version are you going to take? I had asked the same question to my managing director, and he also failed in a certain sense when I look back. He failed because he sided with one of the stakeholders in this chain. What he should have said is that I will side with what the vision, mission, values need me to do. So if the vision, mission, values say that at this point you should side with the employees, absolutely. But if it says no, at this point you should side with your stakeholders, with your shareholders, with the top management team, absolutely. Because that's where you're doing justice. That's where you're being ethically and morally correct. With this, I think we have got a glimpse of understanding who influences what exactly, and hence how to improve culture. If you need to have a further discussion or engage us, please write to us. We would be very happy to help your organization align your culture. And of course, we have a battery of tests for hiring which could help you hire. In fact, one that I find missing is organizations not looking at values of the individual and trying to judge that value through verbal or interviews. Let me tell you, interviews, human bias, interviews should not have more than 30% weightage in a hiring decision. 70% weightage should be given to objective modes of testing like assessments. Reach us if you want to engage further, and I hope you like it. Do share, like and subscribe. We are trying to help India do better, and we are very keen that the right culture is propagated within organizations so that we are able to gain the right demographic dividend. So often I am contradicted by CXOs saying, Ruben, if we don't find the right people, what do I do? I still need to hire. And my only point there is that you would hire today and tomorrow you'll be in pain trying to correct that mishiring, number one. Number two, if everyone gets into a principled way of hiring the right person, the quality itself would improve. Because often we are told that India does not have the right quality. Sorry, India has the right quality, or we should be demanding the right quality from the educational institutions. We are not demanding that. And hence whatever is served on the plate, we are quickly finishing it off. Because it seems that we are too rushed to fill chairs rather than to grow organizations. With this, I rest my case. Thank you everyone. Do share and leave back your comments if you have liked what I have shared in this session, and have a nice day ahead.